Introducing veteran international real estate investment expert, author, and speaker, Adiel Gorel.
Real estate tips, investment strategies, wealth building tips, retirement riches, all right here with Adiel Gorel.
So there's a question that I get, and it goes like this. Is the current housing market a bubble? And it's everywhere. Everywhere in the media you can read, is this a bubble? Is this gonna burst? Is this a bubble? And people are still very scarred from the last go-around, where in 2005 and 2006, values went up so much that every article in every media outlet said, this is a bubble and it's gonna burst. They had visuals even of bubbles bursting and everybody talked about it. And it was actually relatively clear to most people. I know it was clear to me, but it was clear to most people that yes, it was a bubble and bubbles are due to burst. And why were we so certain that it was going to burst? Because the lending standards in 2004 and especially 5 and 6 deteriorated, where the barrier to getting a loan became essentially zero. So they were giving loans to every single person. It doesn't matter if you are qualified, if you are not qualified. There were movies made about this and the crash that followed. And they were interviewing people who worked at, McDonald's, who bought 7 homes. How did they get loans? So they got loans because they were giving loans to everyone. How did they get the money to buy? Not a problem. There were loans for 100% of the value. There were even lenders lending 125% of the value. So given that there was such a large number of bad loans, which we can call subprime loans, it was very clear that once these people are not able to pay, things are going to crash. So that was a clear bubble, and the bubble burst. Fast forward to 2021. And now the situation is almost reversed. We do have one thing in common with 2005 and 6, and that is that the prices have gone up quite a bit in the past year and a half during the pandemic. And we'll talk about why in a second. But prices have gone up a lot. That's why the question is being posed, is this a bubble? At least as far as the subprime lending is concerned, absolutely not. In the aftermath of the recession, there was the Dodd-Frank rule that came out to make qualifying for loans much more difficult, many more disclosures, and even people with great credit and great income started saying, oh wow, it's really a pain, to get a loan. People without good credit or without the ability to pay just couldn't get loans. Well, that got even worse when the pandemic started around March of 2020. The Fed lowered rates to essentially the lowest point in the history of all time. And people started attacking the banks to refinance to these low rates, to buy with these low rates. And the banks were getting much more demand that they could even handle. So they toughened the criteria to get loans even more. So the loans that are being given in 2021 are loans for people, to people who are highly qualified. So from that standpoint, it has no resemblance to the bubble of 2006. In that respect, it is not a bubble. However, prices did go up quite a bit in many markets. Not all markets, by the way, in many markets. Why did they go up? So number one, many people started feeling afraid to live in apartment complexes. They didn't want to use the same elevator as everybody else because of the virus. They wanted a home in the suburbs with a yard because they've experienced the lockdown. And they say it's much nicer to have a home with a yard if we are in lockdown and room for a home office. Coupled with the fact that many companies started enabling, especially tech companies, their employees to work from everywhere. So single-family homes became a very hot item that people really wanted. People wanted single-family homes. So the demand is enormous, the supply is very low. We are still running at a deficit from the lack of building that transpired during the recession of 2008, 9, 10, 11, even 12. They weren't building much. So there, and the population is growing. So there is already a big hole of supply. And now the demand is insane. And in many markets, the prices just went up like crazy. So yeah, the prices went up. However, it also has to do with building materials. So lumber prices shot up a few 100%, then they went down, then they went up, then they went down. Many other things that are needed to build a home, such as sheetrock and many other, went up like crazy. Building materials are expensive now, and the supply chains are suffering from the pandemic delays in transportation. So yeah, it costs more to build. Many of the counties and cities take a lot longer to approve and send inspectors because people work from home and the pandemic and all of that stuff. So just the cost of building is high. By the way, there is a big labor shortage. I talked about it on the Maria Bartiromo show a year and a half ago when I said in the middle of the country, the enhanced unemployment benefits are going to create a situation where people are going to prefer not working to working because they'll get paid more. By the way, she said, oh, that's an interesting point. My next guest is the Secretary of Labor. I'll share it with him. And indeed, it's come true. So many builders have a hard time even getting people to work for them. So they need to pay them more. All of those things point to intrinsic costs of building homes. Now remember, if there is a correction, not a bubble that's bursting, it's likely to affect more some expensive markets where maybe it costs $700,000 to actually build the sucker, and then the rest of the cost of $1.5 million is the land and but we are looking at markets where we are buying. Markets like Oklahoma City or Tulsa or Central Florida or Raleigh, even now with the super high boost in prices, we are buying homes between $200,000 and $330,000. Most of them $200,000, $250,000, $260,000. This is still very close to the intrinsic cost to build the home. The probability that these are going to crash bubble-like that's bursting is actually quite low. We can talk a lot more about this, and indeed we will talk a lot more about this at our next live event. You're all welcome to be there. That's a big subject. There's a lot to say, but for now, this is just a little starter. Thanks for joining me today. Click the subscribe button for more video on real estate. Got a question or comment? I love questions and comments. Leave yours below. And here's another video you've got to see.